Hi, my name is Simon Hurley and I'm a 14-year-old card maker. I'm super excited to be sharing this card making techniques class with you. And today we're going to be showing you guys how to use glossy accents to embellish your cards in so many different ways and add some texture and dimension to the pieces as well. As you can see on this card, there's a bunch of texture and shine on all of the little images and little people that are standing there and their little outfits. So I hope you guys will stop by. Let's turn down to my work surface and get started. So we're going to start off by cutting our card base once again using some heavyweight cardstock and cutting it on 5.5 the lengthwise. So that will create another 2 card bases, except this time we're making a side folding card. So we're going to bring in our scoring board once again and then just move the trimmer out of the way. And then we're going to bring in our Teflon bone folder and score right at the A2 size, because this is an A2 size card. And then I can just fold it over. And that'll create a nice crease. And if you want to, you can just fold it on your own without the scoring board, but this just makes it a little bit easier. I'm also just going to quickly cut one more panel for the card after the card base. And this is just going to be a panel that goes right on top of it. So this is going to be 5 1/4 by 4 inches. And this is just going to create a little panel that will go right on top of here, and this is what's going to have all of our images and coloring right on top of it. So now for all of our stamping, we're going to be using the Misti stamping tool. This will just create a little bit easier for us for all of our stamping. And if you make any mistakes, you can stamp it more than once, so you can get all 3 of these kids stamped at once and all aligned in the exact same spot. So I'm just going to be lining it up right in the corner of the Misti. Make sure it's all the way down there, because that will ensure that you're going to be able to stamp it once again in the exact same spot. And then I'm using this neat and tangled set called Better Together, and we're using these 3 kids holding their little animals in them as well, which I think is just awesome. So we're just going to align these onto the card panel and just make sure they're nice and centered. So just align them as best as you can. And if they're a little off, it's totally fine, because these kids can be standing wherever they want. A little trick to also align them is just by using your bone folder or really any straight surface on here to just kind of push them all up to the same level, and that will help just align them really nice and straight onto the card. So I'm picking it up with the lid of the Misti, which is kind of like an acrylic block, and this will have all of your images onto it so you can ink them up and stamp them. So now we're going to grab the Memento Tuxedo Black ink. This one's a little bit different, and it'll work perfectly with our Copics to make them not bleed. And so I'm just going to add a little bit of ink on top of here. Just pounce your little ink pad and make sure it's covering all of the images. And if you do make any mistakes with stamping this the first time, you can definitely restamp it in the Misti, which is why this tool is so awesome in case if you make a little bit of a mistake. So just press that down. Give it a little pressure over all the images to make sure everything stamps, but don't push it too hard. You don't need to be a CPR stamper. And then this is good and everything is stamped, but if I needed to, I could go right back over it again with the Misti. So we're just going to pull that out and set it off to the side. And we're going to start off on our coloring for this image. So right now we're going to be coloring all these images with our Copic markers, which will be nice and quick of a coloring medium, but they're a little bit harder to learn, and you definitely have to have a couple different shades for each color. So here you'll see on this marker there's color numbers here. You're going to want to pick ones with the same letters that go with it, and then just 5 shades that match, and you're going to want to use 3 or 2 for each little area, and this will give you nice blending and shading on all of your images. So I'm going to start out just with the red here, and I'm going to color this little girl's dress, and I'm just going to add little shading all around where that penguin meets and the little border of her dress to just give a little bit of shading. And then I'm going in with the second darkest color and just blending that out. It doesn't take too much effort for this, and really just kind of go back and forth until you have great blending with all the colors. And then I'm going in with the third lightest color and blending the whole thing back out. And if you find you need more shadows, you can go back and forth between any of the markers to make sure you have enough blending in this area. And also you can keep the color more flat if you don't like all of the different blending and all the different shadows you can make with these markers. So I'm just going to continue on coloring all the little images in here, and you can use a little feathering motion if you like as well to get the blending and the color to go a little bit quicker across the page. And this will help with blending because it's a little bit lighter right at the edge, so it'll blend right into the next color. My favorite part about these markers is that they're pretty forgiving, so if you mess up with the color, you can always go back over it with the darker color and keep switching off between all the different colors. And if you go right outside the lines too, the alcohol will kind of push it with the next marker, so you won't be able to see it as much if you make a little bit of a mistake like I did there. Now these markers can seem pretty darn intimidating with all their colors and numbers, and truth be told, just a couple months ago, I actually didn't want to use them because I was kind of afraid of how they would turn out on my projects. But with just a little bit of practice, you don't need to be an expert to use these. They're just like anything else, and if you make a couple mistakes, just keep trying it out because I didn't even want to use these markers just a little while ago. Alright, so now we're going to start off by stamping our sentiment. So we're just going to grab this little hug sentiment that's in here in that awesome little script font there, and peel it right off the backing. And then we're going to mount it to our little acrylic black here. And I'm just going to use the same Memento Tuxedo black ink so that it matches what we colored earlier. So just ink that up, and then give it a nice pressure to stamp it down. So once your sentiment's stamped, we're going to cut it out like this. And we're just going to cut right around it at first, and then we're going to do a nice little border around here. Now these are the scissors that I like to use. They have a little spring in here, so it goes out by itself. So these are really comfortable scissors, but just use whatever you guys have on hand or whatever you guys enjoy, and it's really easy to cut with these. So I'm just going right around the image. Don't go too close to detail, and just go right around all the letters to get a nice outline. So once you have the little sentiment all cut out, we're going to be adding it right onto the center of our card here, right over top of that little girl. So we're just going to be using a little bit of foam tape here to adhere it down and give it a little bit of dimension on the card. So I'm just cutting a little piece of that off, and then I'm going to cut it in half as well, because we have a small little sentiment that we need to stick it under. So just peel off the backing. And then you can stick it right down and stick your sentiment right over top of there. And you can just line it right in the center. Okay, so now to adhere this to our card base, we're just using some tape runner adhesive. And you just run this along the edge of your cardstock, and it just creates a nice little adhesive on there, so you can stick it right down to your card. Then for our card base today, we're actually using a side folding card, but we're going to orient it so that the fold is on the top, and this is going to create a lengthwise card for us. And then we're just going to center the card panel right into the center and give it a nice little border all around it, and just stick it down. So there you have the card, but now we're moving on to the really fun part with the Glossy Accents. This definitely has to be one of my favorite products in the card making world because it gives such nice texture, dimension, and shine onto your projects. Now, when I first started using this stuff, I didn't really know how, and so I added all of it onto a Christmas star onto the card and thought it was going to dry, but it just ended up being a big puddle. So when you're adding this, just be sure to add it in little lines, and you can add it as texture for their hair, so you can follow their little hairline here like this. And you can also add it onto their eyes to give those a little bit of shine as well. That just helps those pop off the card. And their little shirt can have little dots and things like that as well. Just make sure you're adding nice little thin coats of this. If you coat it too much, it won't dry really well and it might press in. You can also add it onto these cute little critters' noses and eyes and things like that to just give more little texture and dimension to your card. I went a little crazy in the example, but you guys don't need to do all of those textures and patterns, but it really does add a lot to your card. You can also coat things like their shoes, so if they're like little rain boats, like little plastic rain boots, you can definitely add it right onto their shoes and just give a nice thin layer onto there. Thanks so much for stopping by for another lesson today. I hope you guys really enjoyed the lesson on how to add glossy accents and a little bit of coloring as well. This just gives some really awesome shine and dimension to your cards, and you can go crazy with it as long as you just keep in the back of your mind my Christmas star, and just remember not to apply it too thick onto your cards. So once this is dry, it creates a really fun look, and I hope you guys will try it out on your cards as well. It's one of my favorite products in the crafting world. So I hope to see you guys very soon for another lesson on Scrapbook.com.